I read every book written by the best read man in America, and today I am going to rank all of them worst to best. So, before I get started, who is the best read man in America? Is it Steve Donahue? Randy Ray, the literate Texan? Harold Bloom? There's lots of people that this title could apply to because, of course, it is a subjective metric. But here I am talking about literary journalist Michael Dirda, longtime writer and editor for Washington Post Book World, which recently was blown up by Jeff Bezos and it no longer exists. But Michael Dirda, he of course has read many books, and for almost 50 years he's written about them in mainly the Washington Post, but a ton of other magazines. And he has published 7 books that I'm going to talk about. I'm sure most of you, if you even if you have heard of Michael Dirda, you probably haven't read many of his books. They're mostly collections of reviews or essays or introductory essays. And there's a couple more miscellaneous things. But in January and February of this year, I did my Michael Dirda project where I read all 7 of his books. And I had a really great time. One, so Dirda considers himself more of a literary journalist than a book critic, in that he's not concerned much with theory or style. Like, he knows what he likes, but he's not academic about criticism. It's more, he's effusing his praise for the things that he likes. And since Dirda has read a good deal of books, there is a lot of content for him to praise. So, yeah, I had a really great time. Not every book that I read of Dirda's was good, or I didn't like them at least. But on the whole, it was a very positive experience for me. And I found so many books that I want to check out in the future. And I also learned a good deal about other literary critics that Michael Dirda looked up to, or still looks up to. He's still with us. He was born in 1948. But like William Empson and Randall Jarrell and I'm forgetting some now. Evelyn Waugh, his criticism. Some other people. Anthony Burgess. Sorry, that's a little tangent. But now I'm going to quickly go into a ranking, worst to best, 7 to 1, of all of Michael Dirda's books. Coming in at 7th place, we have the 2003 book, An Open Book, Coming of Age in the Heartland. So this is Michael Dirda's memoir of his time growing up in Lorain, Ohio, all the way until he goes into the middle of his time at Oberlin College in Ohio as a college student. And this was my least favorite book. One, because it was not criticism or book reviews or anything like that. It's just a plain old memoir. So that is something that I didn't care for as much as the others. Also, sorry to say this, Michael, it was a little boring for a memoir. No offense, I'm not saying that his life is boring, but I'm not a huge memoir guy, and it's really cool to see someone grow up in a bookish childhood, where we see like all the different influences and books that he discovered at like this age or that age. That was great. Also, what was great was just the atmosphere of growing up in blue collar steel town Ohio in the 50s and 60s, and his relationship to his parents, especially his dad, who was a longtime like steel mill worker who just worked and worked and was not really that happy. And he was at odds with his father, being Michael Dirda, being a bookish child, and his father wanting him to be rich and get out of town, have a good life, something like that. So that was good too. This book is 330 pages. I thought like 100 pages over long. Kind of drags at places in like high school and college. There are some nice literary mentor figures, like teachers and friends of, or like parents of friends who are well read and writers. So that was good, but on the whole, I gave this 2 stars. It took me a while to read because I just didn't want to finish it, and I didn't want to go through it, and it was the last book in the project, so I was like, ugh. But yeah, coming in at number 7, An Open Book by Michael Dirda. It kind of, Dirda has recycled a lot of his different anecdotes from this into literary essays that he's written. So also a lot of this wasn't new to me. I had already read it in other places, so that was another knock on it. All right, this next one, I was unable to find a properly priced physical copy or hardcover of this, so I found a cheap e-copy, and that is Book by Book. This is from 2005 or 2006. Here we go. Book by Book, Notes on Reading and Life. So this is my sixth favorite Michael Dirda book, and this was a weird one. It was basically a collection of quotes from Dirda's Commonplace book, and within these like separate categories of quotes that he had written from his notebook, Dirda sprinkled in essays about the certain themes that he was talking about. And I don't know if it was just because I was on an ebook for this. I don't like to do ebooks for nonfiction, but I thought this was a really fractured work. Like, there were good quotes, but at that point I would rather just have a book of quotes and not these strange mini essays that weren't, I don't think they were fleshed out enough to achieve the sort of quality that I was looking for. It wasn't bad by any means, but I wish there was either more or less. It was kind of weird middle ground. And it's hard to explain without like going through the entire book, which I'm not going to do that for any of these just because there's 7 of them that I have to talk about. But yeah, Book by Book, that's not the real cover. I'll put up the real cover right there. But that was my second least favorite Michael Dirda book. So those prior to were 2 stars that I gave. We're moving up in the world now. Here we have a little hardcover. I don't know if you can see that. On Conan Doyle by Michael Dirda. This is from the Writers on Writing series by Princeton University Press. And this, it's not a true biography. Like, you can see, compared to Open Book, it is a super small hardcover. And quite skinny as well. It was only 200 pages. But this, yes, it is partly biographical. Dirda talks about Arthur Conan Doyle's life. Arthur Conan Doyle being the famous Scottish physician and author, most famous for writing the Sherlock Holmes books. but he also wrote The Lost World and the Professor Challenger series, and another a number of other adventure tales and books, as well as lots of essay commentary in London and nonfiction and spiritualism as well near the end of his life. But yeah, this is partly an homage, partly a biography, partly a literary appraisal of Conan Doyle's bibliography as well. So a lot is packed into these small 200 pages. It's, of course, I wanted more because I'm a big Conan Doyle fan from Sherlock Holmes, of course, and I wanted to know more about him. I wanted to know more about his backlog that I hadn't known about before, and Michael Dirda. Michael Dirda is a member of the famous club, the Baker Street Irregulars. It's like the Sherlock Holmes fan club for important people. And he's written a number of, or a couple essays on his time in the Baker Street Irregulars. And he also covers it again here in On Conan Doyle. So that's fun. This was just like a middle of the road book. It has good information on Arthur Conan Doyle. If you want to know like all about his life, you're better served with a biography. I can't recommend any because I haven't read any yet, but you are better off with a biography. But if you want like an all-around, like a comprehensive, but not comprehensive, a simple look at Arthur Conan Doyle's life and work, maybe pick this one up because it's short, and it's to the point, and it's written well. So, yeah. The one set of books from Arthur Conan Doyle that I didn't know about that I really want to check out now is The Adventures and Exploits of Brigadier Gerard, who is it's a series of short stories about this French soldier, I believe, during the Napoleonic Wars. And the way Dirda talked about them, they sound amazing. And I saw there's an NYRB collection of the two, a thick collection. So I really want to get that now. Yeah. Number 5, On Conan Doyle by Michael Dirda. We have Michael Dirda's most recent work from 2015 of Browsings by, not Brown, A Year of Reading, Collecting, and Living with Books. So this Browsings is the second true collection of Dirda's just straight up literary essays. He's not doing book reviews. He's not really talking about specific authors. This was a year-long column that Dirda did for, what was it called? The American Scholar. From February 2012 to February 2013, he did one essay each Friday. Not too long, in hardcover, like a page or two each. And he did 52 of them, and he said, I'm done after 52. And he did. He stopped after 52. So these are 52 bookish essays. And this was the first Dirda book that I ever bought. And I tried it out in mid-January to see if I actually wanted to do a Dirda project. And it was so fun, and you can tell that Dirda is, of course, he's incredibly well-read, but you can tell he's just having a good time talking about some of the things he's read, or going to the used bookstore and being unable to stop himself from buying books, or hiding some books from his wife in the basement because he's buying too many books again, or going to random book sales in the DC area. Michael Dirda's, he lives in Silver Spring, Maryland. That's where he's lived for a long time, which is just it's just across the Maryland border from DC. It's pretty close. But yeah, he's just very enthusiastic about reading, and it's very fun to see that from a critic, where he doesn't just talk about the classics. He's very interested in supernatural fiction, like horror, detective, mystery, sci-fi, fantasy, adventure. I think a lot of that stems from a love of it in his boyhood. But he also knows about all the classics. I'm not sure how great his Eastern knowledge of like Eastern literature is, but Western for sure, top notch. And just these bookish style essays where there's no specific theme that he has to write about. They just flow very nicely, and they're not super deep. They're kind of light reading, but I recommend them if you just want to be inspired to read more and to develop your tastes more. So browsings. This one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, and it's my fourth favorite Michael Dirda. Coming in at number 3, we have. Apologies for this cover; it's so ugly. Classics for Pleasure. Uh, this cover is literally just a list of some of the authors that he talks about, and there's other than my ugly used sticker, there's like a Corinthian column, I believe, right here, because it's classics. But yeah, so this is I believe this is from 2007. Classics for Pleasure, but it is a collection of basically introductory essays. Yeah, it's from 2007. It's a collection of introductory essays by Dirda about different classic authors, ancient classic to modern classic. And he divides up this book into different themes. We have playful imaginations, heroes, loves, mysteries, lives of consequence, the dark side, realms of adventure, encyclopedic visions. But these are just like 2 to 4 page little, not, how do I say this? Just, he introduces who the author is and some of their major works and why he likes them and why he thinks you should read them. And this is one of the 2 books that actually shows the scope of Dirda's reading. He just without breaking a sweat can go from Ovid to Diderot to the Icelandic sagas to Bram Stoker, Sheridan Le Fanu, Anna Akhmatova, just back to back to back. With you're reading one of his essays, and it seems like everything that he mentioned in like one of these essays would take me like a year to read, and that's just one of like these 100 essays in this one book. So Classics for Pleasure, it's great if you want to learn about some new classics. The selections here are not like the top classics. So Dirda, one of his memoir anecdotes is that when he was a little kid, he found this book called The Lifetime Reading Plan by Clifford Fadiman, which kind of goes over like the top level classics in the same style of like introductory essays. So as a way to honor Fadiman and the Lifetime Reading Plan, he chooses books that are not in that reading plan. They're like a little lesser known. So he can do the same thing with this book. And I think it turns out really well. I thought there was a little something missing that made it not a perfect book. I think because Dirda's at his best, in my opinion, when he's doing a book review of just a single book instead of like an author review or a talking about like an author's major works. It's still really good, but there's a little something missing it's not like the quintessent Dirda. So my third favorite, Classics for Pleasure. In second place in the Michael Dirda contest, we have Readings, Essays and Literary Entertainments, which is a neat cover. It's from Indiana University Press, actually, which is kind of weird. But this was the first book that Dirda ever published, but there's some weird one called Caring for Your Books from like the 90s or something. I don't count that. But this is his first like real published work, around 22 years after he started at Washington Post Book World. But this collects some of his Book World columns from the column he did called Readings. And he collects, I think it was like a weekly Sunday column or something. But it was from 1993 to 1999 that these essays are collected. And it's basically the same thing as Browsings, the other essay collection I talked about earlier, except this was published 15 years earlier. And the strength of the essays here is just a little higher than Browsings. I gave them both 4 out of 5 stars, so like they're pretty similar, but it's the same thing. He's just admiring great literature and talking about his life as a very bookish person. So one of the things that I don't like about Dirda's style as an essayist is he's always sighing. He'll write like sigh when he's exasperated about something, and I really can't take. I would always like circle it and be like, one more. But yeah, I really liked this book. It was my favorite essay collection by Dirda. Another thing that I can't stand from Dirda is in every single book, he manages to sneak in the fact that he thinks the most thrilling line in literature is from Hound of the Baskervilles and Sherlock Holmes, when Dr. Mortimer is talking about the footprints that were seen at the murder, and he says, like, Mr. Holmes, they were the footprints of a gigantic hound. And in every single book, Dirda says that's the best line ever. And I disagree. That Readings was number 2. Now we're coming in for the number 1 book that I have read by Michael Dirda, or my favorite Michael Dirda book. And this is his biggest book. It did not take me that long to read because I was actually addicted. I couldn't stop reading it. It's from 2004. This is Bound to Please, an extraordinary 1-volume literary education. Now that subtitle is kind of misleading. Bound to Please, which is like 500 something pages, 520 pages, it's just a collection of book reviews by Dirda. And they're divided up into different, were they themes? Yeah, themes. But they, of course with Dirda, they span every single genre pretty much. And it says when he published, I don't know if you can see at the end, like when he published the book review at the end. And sometimes there's notes that Dirda wrote in if he had to change something, but most of the time he left them completely unblemished from his writing in book world. But I love reading book reviews. I like writing them too. So, and other than enjoying the fact of reading a book review, I'm also studying how Dirda talks about books, how he analyzes the author's life versus the book itself versus the other books in their bibliography, or how he talks about books that are talking about other books, like a biography. Like, where do you draw the line, and like how you're talking about the biography itself versus how you talk about the subject of the biography, because you're reviewing the biography, but you have to explain what it's about. So, really interesting stuff. I love Dirda's book reviews. I haven't read many collections of book reviews like this, but I read a fair bit of like a newspaper book reviews that I cut out from various newspapers, and I'm always not surprised, but I always feel that Dirda is better than most of the book reviews that I read, either because of his wealth of knowledge, or I agree with his writing style or whatever. But if you are to get one Michael Dirda book, I think this should be it. If you don't want to read book reviews, though, I would go for readings, for more like lighter essays. But if you want a collection of book reviews, I think it's hard to go wrong with this. They're not going to be academic or based on too much theory, so you don't have to worry about that if it's something that rubs you the wrong way. But yeah, I thought this was incredible. It was the only Dirda book I gave 5 out of 5 stars, if you care about that. But yeah, really awesome stuff, and a great pinnacle to all these Dirda books that I read in the past 2 months. So if you have read any Michael Dirda books, let me know, because I don't know anyone who has, as far as I know. And if you have been considering trying to do a reading project like this, where you read every book by an author that you like, this is your sign to go out and do that. It's really fun, especially if you do like the author. And it gives you a better idea of their life and their work, because you have gone through their entire thing in a shorter amount of time than if you split it up. So it's fresher in your mind, and you can connect more dots on where they stand. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. This is a longer video, but that's my ranking of Michael Dirda's books. See you in the next video.